Welcome to Hope is Here. My name is Greg Horn, and I'm with my friend Shari Beth Daley. Shari was a nurse. Shari Beth was a nurse by trade at Central Baptist.
Actually, occupational therapist.
Okay, all right. Brad?
All medical.
Yeah, that was good. All medically relating until we're really good friends. I really nailed that one there. So.
Yes, at Baptist Health, Lexington, yes.
Baptist Health, Lexington, but she went on staff at Quest Community Church back...
in the fall of 2013.
Okay, so got almost 5 years there on a church staff. But recently, you all had a retreat and you had breakout sessions. And I know a lot of our listeners have been to retreats, and you actually did one on a topic that I've really had to learn a lot about myself the past couple of years, even though I was in full-time ministry for almost 14 years. Mm-hmm. It's a topic that, I don't know, even as followers of Jesus, a lot of us do well, but you and I both had a similar situation in our lives happen. Both of us lost our fathers recently, who we were both very close to, and caused us really to look at the topic of grief. And you spoke on this topic of grief at a retreat recently at your church, and I just asked if you would send me the information that you shared, your research, and really moved me and helped me process some things. And so I just wanted you today and tomorrow, we're going to do 2 programs on grief, because I know a lot of people that struggle with this, and how do I do it, and what does God say about it? And I just thought you had some really good takes on that. So, Shari Beth, just talk a little bit about, as you put this together, what did you find out about grief?
Well, it's interesting because I was given an option of several different topics to choose from, and quickly in reading the list, I felt like the Holy Spirit was impressed upon me that grief is the one that you're supposed to pick up. And something that I shared when I was leading this breakout is that I don't think prior to my dad dying, he died a year and a half ago, November 2016, that prior to his death that I would have really felt qualified to be someone that would stand up and talk about grief, even though I'd had a lot of losses in life, just like anyone. So what's interesting is after being 18 months into this journey of grief, now what I recognize is that the only thing that really qualifies me to talk about grief is just the fact that I'm human, because everybody experiences it, and it's something that we deal with in a lot of areas of our lives.
I thought that was a great point that you brought up. Just what qualifies me to talk about grief is that I'm human. And, we all love animals, and I'm sure they do grieve. But at the same time, as humans, if you love, you're going to grieve, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And there was a quote that I came across just in, I guess, pretty early on in the journey after losing my dad that I thought captured it pretty well. It just says, "Grief, I've learned, is really just love. It's all the love you want to give but cannot. All of that unspent love gathers up in the corner of your eyes, the lump in your throat, and in that hollow part of your chest. Grief is just love with no place to go." And, we were created in God's image, and God is love, so we are the ones that really have this capacity to love, and therefore grieve when the loss is there, when the love has no place to go because the person that you want to love is gone, or the job that you hoped for didn't happen, or the relationship that you wanted to continue ended. Just grief can happen in a lot of different forms.
Well, and you talked about this in what you shared that weekend at the retreat, that you had 2 miscarriages, you lost 3 grandparents, multiple extended family members, the death of a close coworker from ALS, dating relationships, just like myself here, you had your heart broken in those type of dating relationships, had lost pets, and we know pets can be like family members, had good friends. Like I said, you had experienced a lot of loss in your life, but yet, you shared about it was kind of, until your dad passed away recently, really didn't feel qualified to talk about grief. Share about that.
Well, I think one of the things that I guess made me feel more qualified was the fact of just the depth of the loss. One of the things that came to mind when I was preparing for that breakout is just that the depth of the loss, the extent of the pain, has directly correlated to my need for healing and my desire for answers. It correlated to my inability to just continue on with life as usual. And, I had losses prior to that had impacted me, certainly. But in losing my dad, it almost was just disorienting, losing a parent. I'd never known life without him. And so it was difficult to kind of think, how does life just continue going? All the people around me continue doing what they were doing before. But this person who was such a substantial part of my life was gone. And so it was disorienting in that way. And it really was through experiencing that depth of loss that I feel like God opened me up to receive what I understand grief to be now is really his invitation to me.
Well, share a little bit about your dad. I mean, you and I are good friends because we lost our dads within a year of each other's losing our parents. We have shared some of this, so I know it, but just your dad kind of was a larger-than-life figure, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think that's what made it so challenging to really process that he was dealing with something that could be, that could result in the end of his life. He was diagnosed in the fall of 2014 and really seemed physically fine, had a cough, and really by the grace of God and through investigating that, it revealed that there was that he had a tumor in his kidney, so renal cancer that had metastasized to his lung area. And even in the 2 years that followed, it was I knew in my mind that my dad had cancer, but he seemed to be rewriting the script on what it meant to have cancer, because my dad never appeared to have cancer. He never lost his hair. I mean, any of the medications he took never really, I knew he dealt with side effects of things, but they never, caused him to not engage in life in the way that he was before. He was a very active person, very social, growing up, he never took a day off work for being sick. It just, and that continued even in the wake of cancer. It might have slowed him down a little bit at times, but, underwent chemo for those 2 years and different medications. But he stayed just as active, traveled. He and my mom took several trips overseas and just kept going at the same level and speed that it seemed that he was before. And really, if you asked him how he felt, he didn't really feel like he had cancer. For the most part, he felt well. So I think that was what made it a little even more shocking, because what was kind of the end of the story as far as his life here on earth, he had just 2 weeks prior to dying, he had been in Florida with his buddies playing golf. Had 4 full days of golf on the course, which if I could have chosen an end for how that would go for my dad, that would have been it. That's how he would have wanted to end the end of his life, to look like 4 full days of golf. But just, a week and a half after that, he was put in the hospital, had some issues with swallowing. It was just kind of a bit of a mystery of what was going on. And I was with him for a majority of that time in the hospital, and he was in there for 10 days. And I had come back home after he was going to be sent out of the ICU back to a floor bed, and was going to be going back the following day. And my husband woke me up on the morning of the 17th and just said, "Your dad died last night." And I was completely shocked, because all the reports from the doctor that things were improving. We knew that the swallowing issue was still happening and he wasn't back to his normal strength, but so it was really perplexing. And, you ask those questions kind of, God, why was I not there? And I was just there and I was going back, now the next morning, but he went home that night.
Well, and that was back in November of 2016.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And he was in Huntsville, Alabama. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, on top of, it's one thing when you lose a loved one, but obviously I think it's about 6 hours, give or take a little bit, maybe,
yes.
To drive to Huntsville. So, and of course your mom was there, and yet I know that you and your dad were real close, and you guys talked a lot and things. And so you, like you said, pressed into God, and I love that the thing that God kind of showed you that actually to receive healing is actually, you said, God's invitation. Explain a little bit about that.
Well, I didn't have that perspective on it at the start. Let's say that. I think, 18 months in, sitting down to really reflect on this journey and preparing for sharing about it with other people, is really what formed that for me. That and reflecting back over these past 18 months, that I can see God's invitation in that. It's taken shape in His invitation to me to be comforted, and His invitation to embrace empathy rather than judgment. His invitation to be on the journey of grief, and His invitation to really work the grief all the way through and to show up in it, to show up in my own journey of grief, and to trust Him with the mysteries.
And I think that's the thing that, kind of sometimes I've had a hard time maybe getting my arms around, but I'm doing better as I enter, got through the second year in March, and it's just trusting God with the mysteries, because this side of heaven, there's just a lot of questions we're probably not going to have answers. Is that fair to say that you found out through your grieving process? Absolutely.
And I think something that helped me put those words to it, I was listening to a missionary biography of Darlene Deibler Rose. I think that's how she pronounced it. She and her husband were missionaries to Papua New Guinea back prior to World War II breaking out. And when it broke out, she was put in a Japanese internment camp. And through listening to her book, Evidence Not Seen, I guess Evidence Not Seen, she referred just kind of in passing to something that she was struggling with that she couldn't quite understand, kind of like a, God, why question. And she just referred to, I just had to set that aside and put it in my mystery box. And it made me think of scriptures where it talks about the mysteries kind of that God holds in His hand, and sometimes He reveals those to us and sometimes not. But it just helped frame for me that those questions, those things that I don't have the answer for, for me at that time it was, why wasn't I with my dad? Why wasn't my mom or my sister there with him when he died? Much less kind of how that all unfolded at the end. For other people, that question might be, why am I still this age and not experiencing the things that I thought I would? I'm not married, or I don't have kids, or, it might be, why don't I have this job, or other things that are mysteries. They don't, our desire hasn't been met in the way that we wanted it to. And that as an act of my will, I really can take that question, that mystery, and rather than it becoming an obstacle in my relationship with God or with other people, something that puts me at distance with them, I can take this and, as an act of my will, really put this in the mystery box and as a way of saying, God, I don't understand, but I love you and I trust you. And I'm going to put this in your hands rather than holding it and kind of stewing on it, and it being something that creates a hindrance in my heart to relationship with Him or with other people.
I want to close today with a passage that Shari Beth shared at the retreat that she spoke at recently on grief. It's 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 3 through 7. And it says, "Give praise to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. He is the Father who gives tender love. All comfort comes from Him. He comforts us in all our troubles. Now we can comfort others when they are in trouble. We ourselves receive comfort from God. We share very much in the sufferings of Christ, so we also share very much in His comfort. If we are having trouble, it is so that you will be comforted and renewed. If we are comforted, it is so that you will be comforted. Then you will be able to put up with the same suffering we have gone through. Our hope for you remains firm. We know that you suffer just as we do. In the same way, God comforts you just as He comforts us." Well, we're going to continue talking about grief and what Shari Beth has learned through this grieving process. So I hope that you'll tune in with us tomorrow on Hope is Here as we continue to talk about how you can have hope through grief. I'm Greg Horn. We'll see you tomorrow.
Do you have a real estate question and don't know where to start? Contact Cecil Holmes with Rector Hayden Realtors. Whether you're in the market, looking to buy, sell, or rent a house, Cecil Holmes would be glad to help you with any real estate questions you have. Give him a call today at 326-0756. That's 326-0756. Cecil Holmes with Rector Hayden Realtors.